HOA Karen sent armed goons to my ranch. She didn't know I rode with a veteran biker club. My name's Colt, and I've lived long enough to know what fear smells like. Diesel and dirt, gun oil and bullshit. But that morning, when they came howling down the ridge in their fake HOA trucks, red and blue lights flickering like some twisted parody of justice, I realized something. This wasn't about lawn violations or property lines anymore. This was a war. I bought the land 10 years ago, 60 acres of hard earth, one stubborn creek, and a two-story ranch house that had seen better days. I wasn't born here, but I bled here enough to earn it. After retiring from the military, I wanted nothing but silence. My back had scars the government didn't even bother to log. PTSD, they said, like it was a cold you could shake. So I rode, built fences, fixed barns, raised horses. Then came Karen. She didn't introduce herself at first, just started showing up near the fence line, phone in hand, muttering about standards. The fifth time she called the county on me for illegal livestock storage, my horse trailer parked 10 feet from the barn. I confronted her. That's when she smiled and handed me a letter. From the Hillside Lakes Homeowners Committee, "You're in violation," she said. "But I'm not in any HOA." I told her, "You are now." Turned out Karen and a group of wannabe lawmen had formed a civic standards task force registered under a phony name with a fake website, rubber-stamped by a Shell LLC out of Nevada. They wore navy polos stitched with HOA compliance enforcement. They handed out citations printed from Staples. And somehow people listened because they screamed the loudest. And then one Tuesday morning, they came with more than paper. I was fixing the eastern paddock when the rumble started. 5 black trucks and a white van crawling up the gravel drive like a death march. Out jumped a dozen men and 2 women, all wearing tactical gear that screamed mall cop more than military, but they had tasers, batons, and one guy even had a body cam clipped to his chest like it made him invincible. Karen strutted out from the lead truck like she owned the sun. "You're in violation of subsection 7 of Hillside Code 14B, she announced. "Unlawful livestock fencing, unpermitted structures, noise pollution. Today, we're issuing forced correction." "This is my land," I said, voice low. "You have no right." She pulled out a document. It was fake. I could tell in one glance. Misspellings. Fake parcel number. Signed by some made-up chief compliance officer. But they didn't care. One of her goons barked something, and 2 others started pushing toward the stables. My horses, Poncho and Dusty, screamed as they were yanked from the stalls. I charged toward them, fists clenched, but I was tackled, shoved into the dirt like I didn't exist. They zip-tied my wrists. They poured bleach into my feed barrels. They kicked in my tool shed door, and as I lay there bleeding from my temple, I heard Karen laugh. "Next time, follow the rules. Cowboy." She left a pink slip on my chest, $48,000 in HOA violation fines. Eviction pending. I sat in the ER that night with 10 stitches across my forehead and mud caked into my ears. The nurse asked what happened. I said I fell. That's what years of military shame gets you, silence. But when I got back home, something had shifted. The gate had been spray painted in red violator. My satellite dish was smashed, my mailbox stuffed with HOA flyers about community restructuring. Karen had even posted a blurry image of me resisting arrest on Nextdoor, calling me a danger to the neighborhood. That should have broken me. Instead, it woke up something old. Something that knew war didn't always come with bullets. Sometimes it came dressed in fake polos and smiled like suburbia. I called Waco, not the town. The man, Waco Tank Ramirez, rode with me in Afghanistan. Ex-tanker, ex-felon for something I won't get into. Current VP of the Black Mesa Nomads, my old biker crew. I hadn't called them in years. "Colt," he said, "thought you were playing cowboy these days. I need the crew." I said, "Pause, then tell me where." 2 days later, 6 bikes pulled into my yard like thunder rolled in chrome. Waco, Maria Steelhead Gonzalez, Dusty Ray, Twitch, and the twins, Burke and Byrne. They didn't ask questions. They saw the damage. They saw the footage from my security cams. They saw Karen's smug post. "This ain't no HOA," Waco muttered. "This is racketeering." And he was right. I started digging. Real deep. Karen's LLC traced back to a P.O. box in Vegas. No oversight, no legal authority. But she'd filed hundreds of citations, evicted two elderly couples, sued a young mother over non-standard window shutters, all through this fake enforcement unit. Even the sheriff had been fooled. Karen showed them just enough paperwork and threats of legal complication that they stayed hands off. Until we changed that. By the end of that week, I wasn't just some broken-down rancher with a bloody forehead. I was a man with a plan. And I had brothers and sisters who didn't wear suits, didn't ask permission, and didn't play nice. We were sitting around my barn one evening, what was left of it, when Waco slammed his boot on the table and said, "You're gonna need receipts, evidence, dates, names." He lit a cigarette and nodded to Maria, who already had her laptop open. Steelhead used to work signals for special ops. Now she hacks HOA databases for fun. Within 30 minutes, she had every violation Karen LLC had ever issued. "Holy shit," she muttered. She filed over 400 citations in 2 years, half of them on properties she had no jurisdiction over. "Look here, this woman charged a man $12,000 for painting his fence beige." I leaned in, stunned. "Did anyone ever challenge her? She buries them in paperwork." Steelhead replied, "Most just pay or move, and she sues the ones who don't." Waco added, cracking open a cold one. "She's not running a community. She's running a racket." Turns out Karen had filed fake deeds too. In her database were scanned property transfer notices signed with forged signatures. She'd reassigned 3 parcels of land to her HOA trust, including mine. That's when I lost it. "I'm done playing fair," I said, jaw tight. "They came into my home with weapons and took what wasn't theirs." Burke stood. "So what's the plan?" "Boss," I looked out over my ruined land. "We expose everything. Publicly. Loudly." The next week was a blur of fire and fury. We weren't just bikers, we were veterans. Engineers, builders. We turned my busted-up ranch into command central. Steelhead printed every false citation. Twitch, our gearhead, mounted GoPros and drones across the property. Dusty Ray built a full interactive map of every lot Karen had falsely claimed HOA jurisdiction over. Meanwhile, I did what I'd been avoiding for years. I called the town council. At first, they brushed me off. HOA disputes are civil, not criminal, until I sent them a 300-page PDF titled HOA Karen, Legal Fraud Summary. Waco grinned when the first councilman replied, "Jesus Christ." I had no idea. But we weren't done yet. We sent copies to the local paper, uploaded files to public servers, and most importantly got in touch with the 3 families Karen had targeted before me. One was a widow who'd lost her late husband's military shadow box in a forced garage inspection. Another was a young black family that Karen accused of bringing down property values because of their porch furniture. We invited them all to the ranch, and they came. That Saturday, my yard filled with people. Some came in pickup trucks, some walked, a few rode in with us, Karen's victims. Neighbors who'd been afraid to speak, a few quiet cops who'd finally started connecting the dots. We told stories, showed documents, played the footage of Karen's goons dragging my horses. We displayed the forged titles, the fake badges, the shell companies. And people cried. Maria handed out flyers with QR codes to the Karen files, an online folder we built with every dirty trick they'd pulled. By sundown, it wasn't just a gathering, it was a reckoning. Then came the call. From a city official. "We're suspending all Hillside Lakes HOA enforcement claims," he said, voice tight, "and we're opening a fraud investigation." I hung up and smiled. For the first time in months, I breathed without clenching my fists. But Karen wasn't done yet. At 3:17 a.m. the next night, my dogs went crazy. Lights flooded the pasture, 5 trucks again, but this time, we were waiting. We had cameras on every fence post, mic'd the yard, and the nomads, they weren't sleeping. Karen stepped out, still wearing that damn HOA code enforcement vest, and shouted, "This property is under community seizure. We have legal authority to impound all assets." That's when the ranch lights snapped on and 6 bikes roared to life. One by one, the nomads pulled forward, surrounding her in a semicircle. Not threatening, just present, like iron will wrapped in leather and steel. Waco leaned on his bike and said, "You brought war to a veteran's house. You forged titles. You threatened women and children. And you got caught." Karen went pale. "You think a vest and a clipboard make you God." Maria said, "Lady, this ain't your kingdom." Karen tried to run. Twitch grabbed her by the arm, gentle but firm, and handed her to the county deputy who'd arrived just in time. "You're under arrest for impersonating a law enforcement officer, fraud, and unlawful seizure of property," he said, cuffs already snapping closed. I watched from my porch, silent, numb, alive. Karen's arrest didn't come with fireworks. There was no dramatic camera crew or news van, just the hollow click of cuffs, the rustle of a clipboard hitting dirt, and the momentary gasp of a woman who realized she'd built an empire on sand. But what came after? That's when the storm truly rolled in. By noon the next day, the story had spread like wildfire. One of the deputies at the scene had taken a photo of Karen mid-arrest, her fake badge dangling. Dirt streaked across her vest, face twisted in disbelief. Someone uploaded it to Reddit. Title: "This HOA president got busted for running a fake HOA empire. Texas doesn't play." Overnight, it hit 30,000 upvotes. By morning, it was on the local news. At the post office, people nodded at me like I'd walked off a battlefield. At the hardware store, a man slipped me a coffee and said, "It's about time someone stood up to her." I didn't want to be a hero. I just wanted peace, but heroes aren't made in quiet. They're made when someone else breaks the rules and the rest of us refuse to look away. It wasn't just my ranch. Turns out Karen's fake HOA had reached further than we thought. A single mom evicted over a sandbox violation. An elderly war widow fined $800 for flying an American flag at night. A Latino family shamed for having too many relatives over on weekends. Suddenly, every newspaper wanted a quote. The city council scheduled a public hearing. The sheriff's office confirmed an ongoing criminal investigation into Karen and her task force. And then came the HOA board members, well, the so-called ones. They scattered like roaches. 3 of them resigned. 1 fled the state. Another claimed he was just a volunteer and never knew the documents were fake. Steelhead tracked his signature on over 40 citations. Oops. The council meeting that week was standing room only. Folks who never cared about zoning laws before were now holding up laminated "End Fake HOAs" signs. The mayor looked like he hadn't slept in days. I stood in the back, arms crossed, while person after person came up to the mic. An older man, Tom Briggs, told how Karen inspected his backyard without consent and wrote him up for excessive dog barking. Tom's dog had been dead for 4 years. A teenage girl read a letter her mother had written before they were evicted. Her voice cracked halfway through, but she didn't stop. And then, they called my name. I walked up slow, not out of fear, just the weight of it all. "My name's Colt McCready," I said. "I served overseas, came home, bought land with my own hands. And then a woman who never owned a single acre of dirt told me I didn't belong." I paused. "She forged deeds, lied to your offices, abused the trust of this town, and we let her because she sounded official." Silence. "But I'm here to tell you, no clipboard, no badge, no vest makes someone right. Only the truth does." That's when the room stood up and clapped. The DA didn't waste time. With the evidence, we'd gathered videos, documents, testimonies. Karen faced 4 counts of felony fraud, 2 counts of impersonating a law officer, multiple civil suits from evicted residents, unlawful seizure of livestock and property. Karen pled not guilty, claimed it was all a misunderstanding, that the HOA was real to her, that she was trying to maintain standards. Her lawyer asked for a plea deal. The town said hell no, And while she sat in county lockup awaiting trial, something wild happened. We could have just gone back to business, fixing fences, painting barns, riding trails, but the nomads weren't done. We should throw a party, Maria said one night. Waco nodded. A homecoming. So we did. We called it the Writers and Ranchers Festival. One weekend of food trucks, music, open land tours, and booths where lawyers volunteered to help others untangle fake HOA threats. The turnout massive. Families, veterans, bikers, farmers, even the mayor came. And right there, in the middle of it all, we held a public ceremony to restore every stolen deed. I stood by the podium with a folder in hand. This one's for you, I told the widow, handing her back the papers Karen had tried to steal. She wept into my shoulder, and then I did something unexpected. I rebuilt the main fence not to keep people out, but to remind us. Across the top rail, I burned a phrase in iron: no paper can take what's earned with dirt, sweat, and truth. The townspeople helped seal it with their names, carved into wood slats below. Even the sheriff stopped by, patted my shoulder, and said, "We won't let this happen again." You'd think that would have been the end of it, the trial, the arrests, the crowds. You'd think evil gets caught, good gets rewarded, and everyone rides off into a dusty orange sunset. But justice doesn't ride clean. It rides last, and sometimes it limps. They held it in the county courthouse, about 3 miles from the ridge where her fake HOA banners used to fly. By then, the world had caught on. Local news vans lined the street. National outlets picked up the headline: Texas woman arrested for faking HOA, seizing land from veterans. Inside, Karen sat behind the defense table, looking like a parody of herself. No vest, no clipboard, just a beige pantsuit and a lawyer who looked like he regretted every second of it. I sat in the front row, arms crossed, boots on the polished floor. The prosecutor didn't waste time. Ladies and gentlemen, the defendant impersonated a legal entity, falsified property documents, and abused her position to terrorize residents. They brought out the scanned deeds, the body cam footage, the violation slips. They played the video of her screaming, "We are seizing this property," as she kicked open my barn door. Karen's defense. She was trying to preserve community values. She believed she was doing the right thing. She had good intentions. The courtroom didn't buy it. Neither did the jury. It took 3 hours. Guilty on all counts. She got 20 years, 2 decades in state prison, no chance of parole for the first 7. But even that wasn't the worst punishment. The town turned its back on her. Her home was foreclosed. Her bank accounts frozen due to lawsuits from 19 separate families. She lost everything, not because someone destroyed her, but because she tried to control what wasn't hers and believed no one would fight back. She was wrong. The town council passed new laws, stricter regulations on private HOAs, annual audits, background checks for board members, and open public records for all neighborhood governance. The Karen Clause, they called it. The sheriff's office established a task force to review every eviction or fine issued by any HOA in the last 10 years. 6 more investigations opened. 1 HOA in a nearby town dissolved overnight. Change came fast, but quiet, too. One warm Sunday morning, the nomads and I rode up to the hill just past the river bend, where the wildflowers stretched like stained glass, and the wind doesn't care who you were, only who you are. We scattered some of Dad's ashes there. He'd passed before all this, but I like to think he'd be proud. Waco pulled up next to me, visor up. "You staying, Colt?" he asked. I looked at the land still scarred, still mine. "Yeah," I said. "Justice built its house here. I want to make sure it stays." The last thing we did was add one final slat to the fence rail out front. Beneath the others, I carved Colt McCready, defender of dust and truth. Not because I needed credit, but because someone needed to remember. And as long as that fence stands, someone will. A few months later, a family moved into the farmhouse 2 lots over. Single mom, 2 kids, dog named Rascal. They brought pie over, introduced themselves, asked if the HOA was cool here. I grinned. There's no HOA. I said, just people. If you respect the land and your neighbors, you're fine. She looked relieved. The little girl waved at my horses. Rascal chased a butterfly. And in that moment, I realized we didn't just stop Karen. We rewrote what it means to belong. What would you do if someone tried to take what you built with lies, fake rules, and loud threats? Have you ever witnessed abuse of fake authority or stood by someone who fought back? Let's talk about power, justice, and what it really means to protect a community. Share your thoughts below. What's your take on HOA power gone too far? Let's open the gates.